Hi there, welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. In this video, I'm discussing the top 30 books I read in 2024. I'll go from book 30 to book 1, and I'll give a description of each book as we run through. So let's start now with book 30. At number 30 is Salem's Lot, written by Stephen King. Now, I did enjoy this book. It's a vampire tale, it's a horror, but I don't think of this as a real deep horror. There are horror elements in there, but it's more about vampires, of course, and also about small town America. I think a lot of this is discussion about small town America. And of course, there's that good and evil thing going on with evil vampire and our good people, our band of unlikely heroes that battle this vampire. And there are thrilling and chilling moments in the story, but a lot of this is just based on the characters. It's character driven, it's about their thoughts, about their observations, about their own lives, about the lives of others, and also just about the small town they're in. And what I like about this is as that progresses, for a lot of this book, it's about these characters and their lives in this small town. But throughout all that, we have this recurring motif of this huge mansion on the hill that overlooks this small town. And that mansion is very atmospheric, very foreboding. The characters look at it and they get shivers down their spine. So it's always there watching over them, always on their minds. And they often think about it as the book progresses. So that's done well. It keeps the atmosphere up in the story, keeps some suspense and tension there as well as we go around those themes about small town America. So I do like the way that's done, the way it's handled. The vampire horror parts of this book, well, they aren't that chilling. They're not strong horror in my view. And I don't even think this would have been a strong horror when it was first published. So for me, it's like a weak horror, but it is entertaining. It's still a good story, a very good story. One of the better King stories, I think. And I did enjoy the read. So I do recommend this if you've not read it. Even if you've not read it for a long time, go back and read it. It's very entertaining. Just the way he explores small town America, I think, is very good as well, because it brings about different attitudes, about different characters in the story. Not even our main characters, but other characters as well. So I like the way King concentrates on characters a lot in this story. And I think that's a sign of early King books. I think early on, King was focused very much on characters. I don't know if he focuses so much on characters now. I think in some ways he does with certain characters, but maybe not as deeply with so many characters in a single book as he did early on with books like Salem's Lot. In the story written by A.J. Finn, this is a true slow burn mystery. It's very slow burn. If you don't like slow burn mysteries, don't read this book, because if a slow burn mystery is going to be a slow burn mystery, it'd be this book. It's very complex, very well put together. The characters in this book are amazing, all of them. Very character driven, and I think each character just shines so brightly in this story. The house it's set in, so what happens, Nikki, the protagonist, is a writer and is invited to a famous author's home. And she's there to help this author write his biography. So that's her job while she's there. What happens though is she's given a son's room. So in this story, there's a cold case mystery. This author's wife and son vanished many years ago. Nobody knows what happened. They vanished at a time, I think, when there was a party at their house or something. And nobody knows what happened after all those years. And our protagonist is told to stay in the son's room, and the room is the same as it was all those years ago. So that's quite chilling, I think, on its own. Very atmospheric. And every character in this book is written so well and adds so much to the story. And I think the house itself, while the house isn't really chilling on its own, the characters think and feel certain things about the house. And it's through those thoughts, through those observations, it makes this house chilling. It's not described in itself in a chilling way, but through character observations it is. So it's interesting how that's done. Also, the mystery plays out quite cleverly. It's clever structure in the story. It is slow burn. It's not a fast paced, not a book with all these explosions and explosive twists and turns. There are twists and turns in the story, but they're handled in a subtle way. So if you don't like books like that, don't read this. But if you like slow burn books, slow burn mysteries, and slow burn cold cases as well, then read this. I think it's written very well put together, well structured, a great read for that genre. Death Comes to Marlowe, written by Robert Thorogood, a cozy mystery, the second book in the Marlowe Murder Club mystery series. I do like this. What I like about this, it takes our three main characters, and we meet them in the first book, of course, but in this book it develops them even more, and their growth is so good in this book. In fact, their growth is good over the whole series. This book has a great mystery. It's a classic closed room murder mystery. And I like the way it's handled. I like the setup. When the murder occurs, we have a few people in the house. There are many people outside the house. So part of the fun of this mystery is trying to work out who the culprit was. Was it somebody in the house who had more access, or somebody outside? If they were outside, how did they do it? How did they manage it when they're witnessed outside when the murder occurred? So that's great fun in this book, trying to solve that through the protagonist's point of view. And I like this book and this whole series because each of the three main characters feels so different. They come from different backgrounds, have different experiences, and of course have different growth in this series and in this book. And their points of view are so different as well. So it's a great story, I think, a great mystery. It's almost perfect as a book. Just slight little things there I didn't like to make it a 5-star read, but it's still a very good book in my view. Great cozy mystery, a great series overall. If you like cozy mysteries, now this isn't really a kind of true cozy mystery, and true cozy mysteries I think of a little bit differently. This is more a general mystery, cozy mystery feel, and I think this is attractive as well to people who just like general mysteries. So if you like general type mysteries, then give this whole series a go. This is book 2. Start from book 1, I suggest, because in book 1 you get to meet our protagonist for the first time. Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. Now, I still think about this book. I read this book, I think, in January this year, in 2024. And I still think about this book from time to time, so it stuck with me for a long time. The thing about this book is characters aren't named. No character has a name. Characters are referred to about what they are, not about who they are, about what they are. So we have the child, we have the husband, we have the intruder, we have the stranger, all those types of things. That's how characters are described. A very clever thing, I think, in this book, because it makes the reader focus on the action, what's occurring in the scenes, rather than the characters themselves. We're not focused on trying to remember names here and there. We know who characters are based on what we're told about them and what they're doing in those scenes. This book starts out quite strongly and holds that tension and suspense. It did for me anyway. And I like the scenes where the intruder is in the house. So part of this book where it starts is we have a mother and her 2 children in a house, and an intruder breaks in. And they're hiding in the house and hearing the intruder walking around and talking to himself and yelling. And they have 3 choices. They can hide, stay there and try to hide. They can fight back, or they can run. And that's the whole basis of that first tense moment in this story. It's very tense. It's a book that will hold on to you. There are very big twists and turns in this story. Some are shocking, some not so much, but this is a book that stuck with me for a very long time. And as I said, I still think about parts of this book even now. Primarily those scenes where we have people hiding in the house with the intruder walking around because they were so chilling and gripping. I still think about those scenes a lot. Everyone Who Can Forgive Me Is Dead, written by Jenny Hollander. It's a mystery, very psychological in nature, and written very well. 2 things about this book stand out for me. So the mystery itself, it's so clever, and to get to the end, it's just clever twists and turns. It's very entertaining and engaging. It's almost like a merry chase to get to the end, if you want to think about it like that. And the second thing is the characters. The characters in this book are written so well, all the characters are. You feel compassion and repulsion for characters, sometimes the same character at different times. And every character suits who they are. You feel pure emotions about characters, and not every book, I think, makes the reader feel pure emotions. I don't feel pure emotion about every book I read, about every character in every book I read. You don't really, do you? And it all depends on how characters are written and the writing style and how the overall book is written, I think. And this book is written in a certain way where everything feels pure. And in this book, I think trauma. So this book is also about trauma, about the results of trauma in some characters' lives. And I think as that goes in this book, it's written very well. I don't think every author can write about trauma and grief and those strong emotions in a way that feels real, that feels genuine. But in this book, it does. I don't know how the author did it, but in this book, you can really kind of feel the author may have even gone through something like this or know somebody who did, because it's very pure emotion in the characters, how they're reacting now to something that happened in the past. It is past-present split narrative. I'm not the biggest fan of that in stories. I'm getting more used to it now because so many books have that split, but in this book, both narratives are handled very well. I did like the present narrative more than the past narrative, I have to say, but I think both are there and needed, and both provide key information and key scenes the story needs to make it a great read. But a great story, and again, the emotion in this book is so pure, it's wonderful. Darling Girls, written by Sally Hepworth. This is a cold case mystery and a quiet book. And what I mean by that is it relies on characters to drive the story. It's not relying on shocks, on big shocking twists and turns, on big scenes. It's quiet. It's a gentle read, but it's interesting and engaging because the characters and the situations are compelling. What we have is three main characters, and these three main characters in the past, it is past-present split. These three main characters were all in foster care, living in the same foster home for a period of time. And something happened while they were there, and we learn about what that is as we progress in the story. But anyway, the start of the book, they're all adults in the present narrative, and they all learn about bones being found in the grounds where they once lived together in a foster home. And they're all intrigued by this because they think they know who it is. And they all travel to this small town where this house is, and they're all sure they can help to solve this mysterious case of who these bones are, who the bones belong to. We learn many things about the past and also the present, and I like in this book how each of them is so different. They were different in the past in the foster home, but what happened there shaped them differently as well, and they react differently to memories in the present time. And it all feels just so consistent, so genuine to who those characters are. It's written very well in that way. I think characters in this book are amazing. And then we have a villain type character. It's interesting because this villain type character, you feel negative feelings towards, but you also empathize with this character as well. You get to understand why this character was like they were in the past and present narrative. I mean, it's interesting that you have a villain that you can feel compassion and empathy towards, but also feel like repulsed by what they do as well. So that's, I think, very well written as well in that character. And I wonder about how the author went about that. Is it harder to write a villain character like that, to give that villain motives that readers can empathize with and feel compassionate towards? Give them a history that feels so real and so awful that we also empathize with. So it's interesting, I think, why the author chose that path to write this villain type character. What I also like about this book, these characters being in foster care, I think the author also did a lot of research based on this, spoke to many women who were in foster care in the younger years, spoke to social workers, spoke to people who, owned foster homes, all that sort of thing, to do research for this book, to understand how they felt about their past, how they felt about what they went through. And that comes through in these characters very much. I think all that research, all those discussions, made all the characters in this book very strong. I really enjoyed this read. I recommend this book very much. The Woman in the Library, written by Sulari Gentill. Now, this book is metafiction, but I enjoyed it. Colour me surprised. This book also includes, letters and things in the narrative, and I enjoyed that as well. So colour me surprised a second time. I don't usually enjoy metafiction or letters and diary entries, that sort of thing, in a narrative. Not my type of thing. But in this book, those two things I did enjoy, so I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the way the overall book is written or whatever, but I enjoyed those two things. So this book is about a mystery, of course. So we have four strangers in a library one day sitting at the same table. They hear a woman scream and they go to investigate but don't see anybody. Then later on that same day, I think maybe even the next day, they hear about a woman's body being found in the library, a woman who's been murdered. So of course they're intrigued, and it draws them all together. These four strangers are drawn together, and they start going about trying to solve this mystery, trying to find out who the woman was, where she came from, what happened to her, and it goes on from there. Very complex and interesting mystery. The structure of it is done so well. There are of course twists and turns, as most mysteries have, but the characters, I think, in this book, those four main characters, are written very well. There are little kind of minor things here and there that I think could have been tweaked, but overall it's a brilliant story. The mystery is brilliant, the characters are brilliant, overall setup's brilliant. I mean, that scene at the start with that scream in the library, it's in a library, so you think quiet, you think peaceful. Then this scream shattering that silence. It's that impactful, I think, and impactful because of the characters' reactions as well to what they hear and how they react to the news later on. So in my view, written very well. The mystery is structured very well. It's compelling, it's engaging, it's intriguing. It will keep you guessing right to the end. A good mystery, very good book. I recommend this very much, and the cover of this book is brilliant. I love the cover, and I think this would make interesting movie or TV series. It's got characters and a setup I think that work well on a big screen. Invisible, written by James Patterson and David Ellis. It's the first book in the Invisible series. I think there's only 2 books in this series anyway. And this book is brilliant. So, I like this because it has like a 90s and early 2000s thriller kind of feel to it. The vibe to it reminds me of that time period. Primarily, movies from that time period. Just the way this book is laid out and the way all the events play out in the story. And also protagonist Emmy. So I like her very much, and the way the book is written, it draws you into that character. You get behind that character and you just can't wait for the character to succeed, because at the very start of this story, in the first section, she's struggling to get anybody to believe her because she's sure she knows there's a serial killer somewhere, but nobody will believe her. She struggles, she fights to be heard and to be believed. Eventually she is believed, and then the book becomes about the chase to find this elusive serial killer. And I like the way everything in this book is handled. It's not super twisty and turny, so it's not a book where you have surprises and twists and turns. A couple of little surprises here and there maybe, but not major. But it's all about that chase. And that chase, I think, is written in a way that reminds me about those 1990s thrillers and early 2000s thrillers. It reminds me of that very much. And I enjoy that feel, I enjoy that vibe. So I enjoy that type of movies as well. This book has a nostalgic feel to me as well. I like that chase to find the serial killer. I do prefer when you have books about serial killers where we have a chase to hunt down the killer. It's something about that I've always enjoyed. If it's fiction or non-fiction, I like that chase. I don't know what it is about it, I just like that chase in this type of story. Handled very well, great book, I recommend this a lot. Season of the Witch, written by Sarah Rees Brennan. So this is book 1 based on the TV show The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I didn't know what to expect with this book because books based on TV shows or movie franchises, whatever, you never know what to expect. Will the characters in the book match the characters on the screen? Will they be as strong? Will they be as memorable? Will they have the same consistency? How are they going to be handled in the book? And in this book, they're handled very well. And I like the more deep dive as well into Sabrina's mind. So this is a prequel to the first series of the TV series. And in this book, it's all about Sabrina, nearing her 16th birthday, and she has that choice. Will she choose to go to the Academy of the Dark Arts and say farewell to the mortal realm? Or will she choose not to go to the Academy and stay in the mortal realm and lose her powers? That's her choice. And she's half witch and half mortal, and with that comes all this love of her mortal friends. She's got a boyfriend called Harvey. She has a life in the mortal realm as well, so it's a very hard choice for her to make. And being a teenager as well, we get the feelings of her as a teenager as she's battling with this choice. Also, we have a deep dive into certain characters in this book that we don't get so much deep dive in on the TV series. That was interesting and well done. It is also a slight paranormal horror, so there are dark elements in this story, a few chilling things going on. It's a YA book, but it's written very well. I enjoyed the read very much. If you like the TV series, I'm sure you'll like this book. Even if you really don't like the TV series, you may have heard of it, not watched it yet, give this book a go. I think as a YA book, it's written very well. I think the characters are perfect. A lot to like about this story. Watching You, written by Lisa Jewell. I have a complicated reading relationship with Lisa Jewell. Some books I love, some books I don't. Very complicated. I never know what I'll feel about a Lisa Jewell book when I pick it up. Fortunately, I really enjoyed this book. What I like about this book the most is the characters. Every character in this book feels real, and every character has doubt around them, so much doubt. The strongest thing about these characters is this feeling of doubt. You don't know who's telling the truth. You don't know who to trust. You don't know what characters will do in certain situations. It's so strong in this book, but handled very well. With so many characters explored in this story, all with doubt surrounding them. Sometimes when that happens, you think, well, it's too much. And some characters feel a bit weak because of it, but in this book, they all feel strong. It's all handled very well. The best thing about this story, so it's also very well plotted and structured. So a lot of books like this, in domestic or neighborhood type mysteries or thrillers, the authors overextend the plot. They go too far with it. They get outrageous with it, especially towards the end of the book, I find. But in this book, it's very controlled. Lisa Jewell, has taken this and not overextended it. She's kept it within the realms of possibility and makes it feel more real. And I like the way the scenes are structured. Sometimes we have just little snippets of things going on. We have some detail maybe left out, or we come into a scene halfway, or things like that, and it leaves things open. But it also makes sure that a story concentrates on what it needs to. Not overextended, the characters are in the right place. They don't run around like, chickens with their head cut off. We don't have outrageous things going on at the end. It's controlled, structured well. It's a very good book, I think. And I think it's so consistent with characters and setting and scenes, just consistent overall. A great story. If you've not read this book, go and read it. Even if you haven't read Lisa Jewell before, read this book. Very good story. A Chalk Man, written by C.J. Tudor. For a debut book, it's so sleek and so controlled, so well written. And maybe it's because in debut books, or even in the first few books for an author, the editors and publishers get more involved. There's more work on the structure, on the editing of the story. And later on, if an author's popular, if they've got 10 or so books and they're very popular, I think maybe editing is a bit looser. Publishers don't care so much. They think, well, this author's going to sell. So maybe the first few books from authors, like this book, there's more editing, more input from other people. So the structure is better in some debut books, and in this book I think that may be the case. This book is very good. Past, present split, a great thriller and a great mystery. What I like about this book is more the past chapters. The characters in those past chapters are written so well and has an 80s vibe because it's set in the 80s. We have teenagers and kids in the 80s going about their lives together on holidays, that sort of thing. And in this small town setting as well. Just adds more, chilling moments to scenes and things because this small town setting and the events that happen in this story. I really like the characters, the way they're handled in that past narrative. In the present narrative, not so much. I mean, it's still good, but the characters aren't as strong. But there are other things going on in the present narrative that are chilling and creepy. And C.J. Tudor has this way of bringing paranormal or horror kind of feelings to mysteries and thrillers. Adds darkness to the story. It drags you in more if you like that sort of thing, and I do. And I like the way all that's handled in this story. It was so gripping, especially the very first scene in this story. Hooked me straight away. I won't tell you what it is, but it's very dark, very chilling, very intriguing, and it makes you wonder what next. So I did like this story overall very much. I think C.J. Tudor is a very good author. I like many of her stories, and I think this book is a great debut book. If you haven't read this yet, go out and read it. A great introduction to this author, I think. Home is Where the Bodies Are, written by Geneva Rose. This is so dark and compelling. A great read. Now, this book is so twisty and turning, and straight away, it hooks you. So we have three kind of mysteries in this story that need solving, and they're all quite dark. So first off, we have three siblings, and one of the siblings is looking after the mother, and the mother is on her deathbed. And before she dies, she says to the sibling looking after her, "Your father didn't disappear, don't trust," and she stops. She dies then without completing that sentence. I mean, don't trust who? That's the first mystery, the first compelling mystery in this story. And then we have the three siblings, and they are all home now. The other two siblings return to the family home, and they're clearing out the house, and they find a box of VHS tapes. And they decide to choose one at random and watch it, and it's an old home movie. Then suddenly they see something else on this VHS tape, something from the past, something about their parents, something that suggests their parents did something terrible many years ago. What was it? What did they do? Because you don't see everything in this video, you don't know for sure what happened is the truth. You make assumptions based on the footage. So the second mystery in this book. And the third mystery is about their father. So of course, when the mother says something on a deathbed about your father didn't disappear, I mean, what happened to their father? What happened to him? Because they all thought he just walked out, disappeared many years ago. That's the third mystery. So three mysteries in this book that's not very long. It's a very quick read, but it's very entertaining. And somehow this book feels like a slow burn. Slow burn with short and snappy chapters. I don't know how the author did that. A very strange blend in my view, because slow burn books don't usually have short and snappy chapters, but this one does. And then towards the end, it shifts a bit and it's not slow burn anymore. It's fast paced, it's more furious, so it's interesting. This book is a weird blend of many things, but it's very entertaining and engaging, and it's a book where you don't know who to trust. And in this book, all three siblings have point of view chapters, and I enjoyed that because through their eyes, we get to see how they view their other siblings and also themselves. And it changes. How they view themselves is not how their siblings view them. In any of these siblings, it's all different. So I like how that's done as well. It kind of reminds you about real life, actually. Some people have a view of themselves that's different to what other people view them as. Probably happens quite often in life, who knows, but it happens in this story. This book is engaging, super engrossing, so compelling and captivating, actually. And I guarantee when you read this, you'll want to read this in one sitting. I did, and I think this is a great story and definitely deserves to be in my top 30 books for this year. The House We Grew Up In, written by Lisa Jewell. So it's not a mystery or a thriller, and we know that Lisa Jewell writes a lot of mysteries and thrillers. In these days anyway she does. And I think in her first few books she didn't. So this book I think may be that bridging novel between her previous style, before mysteries and thrillers, and when she was starting maybe to write mysteries and thrillers. That's what I think. But anyway, this book is more a family drama, a quite dark family drama actually. And it focuses on the Bird family. And it is past present chapters. Most of the book I think is focusing on the present, but in the past we have a lot of scenes, a lot of chapters based around Easter. Easter is a big time for this family when the kids are young, because it's a big time for their mother. But this book also focuses on the dark theme of hoarding, of the mental illness of hoarding. And we see their mother get worse and worse with that illness as the book goes on. It starts out almost innocently, just putting a few things away here and there. Then it gets worse and worse. But what's worse in this story than the hoarding is that most characters are like enablers. They either ignore it or somehow support it in a strange way. One character tries to challenge it, but is kind of overruled by every other character in the story. So in a way, it's like we have this person who has a mental illness of hoarding, but no support system to say stop, to try to help this person to not hoard. So it gets worse and worse progressively until it's out of control. And in the present chapters, the mother has passed away. And when siblings return to the house to try to make sense of everything, the house is so full of stuff. They're just spending so much time trying to clear it because it's so cluttered, so jam full of all these things the mother's been hoarding all her life, basically. So you really get that deep dive into this mental illness of hoarding in this story. And it's quite challenging, I think. It makes it a very dark themed story. Many other things going on in the book. We have, a few siblings in the story. Something happens to one of them at one stage in the book, and that's like a catalyst for other things in the story to happen after that. So I like the way all that's structured. There is one big surprise at the end of this story. I'm not sure if it's brilliantly written or not. If you read this, you make your own mind up. But overall, I like this book. A dark family drama story that's written very well. It's exceptional, I think, in the way it's written because of the characters. The characters in this story are brilliant, all of them. They all make sense, all consistent. They're all strong characters. And I think this would make a great TV series. I think the characters, what they go through, the events in this book, are great components for a TV series. The Night Stalker, written by Robert Brenza. So it's book 2 in the Erica Foster crime series. And I like this book a lot, just as strong as book 1. And in this book, we have many layers, just like book 1. We have the crime, we have details on characters, we deep dive into some characters, we have political things going on in the police force, we have discussions about things in society, we have many layers in this story. And what that does, and makes this whole book very complex, multi-layered and very real because of it, because all things have many complexities to them. And why have, a crime novel with police characters and not have detail about where they work, about the things they go through in their job? And this book does that. Doesn't mean it takes over from the investigation, the crime, and that mystery. It doesn't. But it's there. And the characters deal with it and makes the characters multi-layered. It gives more well-rounding to the characters because they're dealing with different things other than the crime. And I like the way that's done in this story. I don't see this being done in all crime or mystery series, not at all. But in this book it feels so real because of it. The mystery in this book is interesting and intriguing. The characters are wonderful. Everything in this book, the way it's handled, the way it's written, is brilliant. I quite love this series actually, and I want to read this entire series, and I think there's a second series by the author as well. I've not even started yet, and I do plan to read that. So for me, very good writer, great at this crime mystery elements going on, great at characters, exceptional at characters, and I think the characters and those layers are the shining light in these books. The mysteries themselves are quite complex and they're very engaging and very interesting. But I think the characters, if those characters weren't written so well, I don't know if this book would have been brilliant because it's those characters that drive so much in this story. His and Hers, written by Alice Feeney, a dark and twisty mystery and thriller. We have two protagonists, and they used to be married. They're not now. And we have one protagonist, she's a news reporter, and then her ex-husband is a detective in a small village, and ends up being the small village they both grew up in. What happens in this story is a body's found in this small village, a body of a female victim. And it turns out it's somebody they both knew in their teenage years in this small village. News reporter, she's been told to go to the village and cover the story. And when she gets there, at the scene, something's found. And something found on the scene that kind of links both of them to the scene of the crime. They don't say anything about it, and they're both thinking that their ex-wife or their ex-husband could be responsible for the murder. And both of them are also trying to prove they're not guilty by trying to prove the other person is guilty. That's very dark and twisted in this story. The point of view chapters are from both characters, and they're done very well. Both characters are brilliant, I think. I think the mystery is brilliant. I think there's also past, present chapter changes in this story. Not many of them, but we get a bit of history about the characters and about their lives as teenagers in past chapters in this small village. But I think the way everything's handled in this story, those dark elements about them trying to prove the other person is guilty, to save themselves, to cover up things, because what happens is the main character, the detective, he starts to get worried and he may cover up things in the story as well, in the investigation. So we get all these things going on in the story that makes a compelling reading. And of course, most is driven by the characters. And that's what I'm finding as I go through this list of top 30 books. Many books in my top 30 list are character driven. The characters are written very well. Other things are written very well in the story as well. But the characters are all strong in these stories, and I think that's a sign of a great book, especially in my reading this year in 2024, is great characters. The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. This is a vampire mystery, so it's a vampire modern day and a vampire cold case mystery, set in a world where the existence of vampires has been known for decades, even centuries. And I like the way this is written. We have an isolated setting in Alaska, in a small town that's kind of cut off at certain times by snowstorms, all that sort of thing. And I do like isolated settings in thrillers and mysteries. We have great characters, again, great characters. We have a great setup, a great mystery, and a great protagonist. And what I like about the protagonist in this book is protagonist is just like an ordinary person. The way she's described, her traits, it's all ordinary. She's not super fit. She's not, supermodel. She's an ordinary person. And I love that, the way it's written in this story. Also, the mystery is very clever. So in this small Alaskan town, many of the residents just hate vampires. And we have a small vampire enclave not far from this town, because what we find out in the history on this world, in the world building, is that vampires are all pushed out into small enclaves, pushed out further and further, and the enclaves often are very unlivable. And these vampires, they're trying to get out of those enclaves in some cases. And what happens in the mystery is a teenage boy is found dead in this town, and it looks like a vampire is the culprit. So, a protagonist is an investigator of vampire crimes, and it's her job to decide what happened, and then to decide the fate of the culprit or the vampires in general, because one of the things that could happen is like a culling. The people in the town want that. They want a chance to go and just kill vampires at whim in this enclave. That's the extreme verdict that could happen in this story. So this book, again, great characters. There's great tension with the characters in this story, great suspense. Many undercurrents and many layers to this story. It's all down to world building, all down to the way characters are written, the way the town structure is written, and it's down to just being so consistent in this story as well. a great book. I think this may have been a big risk for this author because vampire stories, I like them, but I think many readers don't like them so much anymore. I don't know, but I enjoy this a lot. And a vampire like cold case mystery and kind of murder mystery going on in a story, is that going to go down with many readers? I don't know. But for me, enjoyed it very much. I recommend this a lot. A great C.J. Tudor book. It kind of shows that C.J. Tudor is very diverse. She's very flexible in what she writes because all her stories are so different. They're all dark themed, but some are mysteries, some are thrillers, some have horror elements to them, but they're very varied, and she has a very flexible way of adding things into her stories. But I think she's a great author. I can't wait to see what's happening next for C.J. Tudor. In the Woods, written by Tana French. So it's the first book in the Dublin Murder Squad series. Now, just a brief note, there's no such thing as a Dublin Murder Squad. It's made up for this book. But anyway, this book is a crime mystery. It's very complex, very complex. Many layers, great characters again, just great characters. Like I've said in many books in this video so far, great characters in this story as well. All characters feel real, consistent, and very varied characters as well in this story. We have two protagonists. We have Rob and we have Cassie. What's interesting about Rob is he grew up in the area where the crime is committed, and the crime is the body of a young girl, I think she may be around 12 or 13 years old, is discovered and she's been brutally murdered. And Rob grew up in this area, and when he was a child himself, some of his friends went missing and he survived. And he was found with blood on him and things like that, but nobody knows what happened. And he hides his past. He's changed his name from the time, and he hides his past. And nobody on the police force knows about his past or his connection to this area. Nobody except the other protagonist, Cassie. So Cassie knows about this past that he has. They're quite close. They're partners on the force, and they're great friends. But Cassie has a conflict. She knows about Rob's past and she's helping him hide it. By doing that, she's almost complicit because he shouldn't be on this case. Is it affecting his judgment? Is he being truthful? And we learn early on, so this book is narrated, the point of view is from Rob. He tells us very early on in this story that he lies, he can't be trusted, that what he says, you don't know if it's true or not. He tells us that early on in the story. So right through this story, you're wondering, is everything we're reading true or not? That's one of the fun things about this book. You never know. You don't know what's true because it's all through his eyes, and he lies. He tells us that he lies. So interesting way to structure a story, but it's handled very well. I enjoyed this book so much. It's quite a long read, very detailed, but the mystery, the way it's complex, the way it's structured, we have secrets within secrets. Your assumptions are just tested time and time again. A great structure to the story, very controlled. I can imagine that the author spent a long time planning and plotting this story, because if you didn't, this type of story would fall to pieces. But this story just holds true and very consistent to what it was from the first page to the last page. And I can't wait to read more in this series. The Marlowe Murder Club, written by Robert Thorogood. So book 1 in the Marlowe Murder Club mystery series. And I spoke about book 2 in this series earlier on in this list of 30 books. This book is a cozy mystery. It's such a great read, and all comes down to the three main characters in my point of view. So our three main characters, they're all so varied. The way they meet in the book is so interesting. They meet during the investigation of the crime in this story. And when you read this book, you wonder, in real life, if they didn't meet about this crime, if they weren't all interested in this crime, they probably wouldn't be friends at all, because they have different backgrounds, different histories, they're interested in different things. But they join forces and start to become friends in this story, and I like the way that happens. It feels very natural. And in this book, those three characters are brilliant. All of them. The mystery in this book is interesting. It is quite complex for a cozy mystery, and I do think of this book as not a true cozy mystery, but more like a general mystery cozy mystery. So I think that people who like general mysteries would find this book entertaining and interesting as well. I like the way the whole thing plays out. I like the support characters in this story. I like the mystery overall. But those three main characters kind of make this story for me because all written so well, they're so varied, and they all feel so real to me in this story. If you like general mysteries, if you like cozy mysteries, I think you'll like this book and the series overall. Rock, Paper, Scissors, written by Alice Feeney. So a thriller and a type of mystery as well, but more thriller. And can you include prosopagnosia in a story and make the story interesting, make it compelling, make it feel real? I think maybe, but in this book, Alice Feeney has done that and made it all those things, made it a brilliant story because of it. So what I'm talking about is face blindness. So one of our main characters in this story has face blindness. That means this character, when he looks at people, even his wife, he can't recognize faces. It's kind of like all blurry or just all disjointed. He has to recognize people by their tone of voice, what they say, even the sound of their footsteps, that sort of thing, their movements. What they're wearing maybe at certain times, but not their face. And this character focuses on husband and wife. They're going on a weekend away together to a remote area in Scotland, and it's very remote, and they're kind of like in a blizzard, so they're cut off when they get there. What's interesting about this book, the hook, the start of the story, is they're both packing the car, and we get points of view from both of them, and it's point of view chapters from both characters, and they're both thinking, if this weekend doesn't work, only one of them is coming home. They both think that. And you think, well, hang on, what's going on here? And immediately I was hooked because I'm thinking, what's going on? Are they both going to try to kill each other? I mean, what's going on in this story? Why are both characters, why this husband and wife, both thinking that only one of them will return home if the weekend doesn't work? That hooked me straight away. Then the atmosphere of their location, this renovated chapel, renovated church. And it's very spooky, dark and dusty with locked rooms and things like that. And certain things happen while they're there that make it even spookier, more atmospheric. A lot going on in this story that drives that atmosphere in the book. I like this book very much. It has twists and turns, and one thing I think about Alice Feeney is in most of her books, her twists and turns are just spot on. Well timed, well placed, makes sense. They're not that extreme, and I like the way she handles all those things in her stories. So I like her as an author overall. All books she writes doesn't have that same polish to them, but most do in my view, and this book is exceptional. So I like this very much, recommend it a lot. If you've not read this, read this book. Just the way face blindness is included for a character in a story and to make it feel real. The way it's handled in the book makes it feel real. And I could think easily something like that could be cheesy or just overdone or handled in a wrong way. But in this book, it's perfect. If There Be Thorns, written by Virginia Andrews. So it's book 3 in the series that gave us Flowers in the Attic. So I like this book a lot. And this book in tone and feel reminds me of Flowers in the Attic very much. So this book is very gothic in feel, very dark themes, and it gets darker and darker as the book progresses. It is melodramatic, and I don't usually like melodrama in books, not usually. But in this book, I don't mind it, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the way it's written. I don't know if it's because I expect it in this book and this series, but the melodrama is okay to me in this story. And the author took a risk in this book, I think, because the point of view chapters are not from the main characters in the first 2 books of the series. They're from children. They're children of one of the main characters. And these children characters, who I think maybe 12 and 13 and maybe around 10 or 11, the 2 boys, it's their points of view that drive the story. And they witness things going on about other characters, so it's interesting the way it's handled. But their points of view are quite different. One of them, Jory, he's quite light in his point of view. Everything he sees, he's like his brightness in the book, his lightness. Then we have Bart, and Bart is darkness. He's more dark themed, and his attitude and the things he does is more dark themed as well. And we have that battle going on in the story between their points of view. As the book progresses, I think the darkness starts getting more and more intense, starts taking over from the lightness. And as the book nears its end, I think the darkness almost consumes the lightness altogether. It's interesting, that progression, and makes this compelling and interesting. There are many things going on in this story that just grip you, grip me anyway. I won't tell you all about them. If you want to read this series, go ahead and read it. I'll just tell you though that the first book, Flowers in the Attic, and this book are brilliant. The second book, not so much. You have to read the second book to get to this book because things in the second book lead on to this book in a way. But I say get through that second book because it's worth it, because this book is just amazing. And I like this book so much. There are 2 more books to read in this series for me. And I think the last book, the 5th book, is almost like a prequel. But I like this book a lot. I recommend it a lot. Whatever went through the mind of Virginia Andrews to write this book, that risk, all the risks she took in this story paid off. I mean, it's rich, it's dark, it's atmospheric, it's gothic, it's gripping, it's even chilling in some cases. But it's just a compelling read. It all comes down to how she wrote the point of view chapters from the 2 boys, and it's brilliant, I think, in how it's written. The Girl in the Ice, written by Robert Brenza, so book 1 in the Erica Foster series, and I spoke about book 2 already in this video. So in 2024 I read books 1 and 2, and they're both brilliant reads. Anyway, this book. What stood out for me straight away is the protagonist, Erica Foster. Brilliant character, maybe one of the best characters I've read in books in the last few years. Just the way she's written, she feels so real. We're shown so many things about her in this story. It's not shoved down our throats, not banged over the head about it. We're shown it. Because we're shown it in such a way that it feels so real and just so consistent, she feels like a person when you read this book, not a character in a story. And also, this book is multi-layered. Of course, we have the crime, the investigation, we have Erica, we have other people in the police force, we have deep dives into Erica and some other characters as well. Also have other things going on in this story. So we have a discussion about the inequalities of justice. We have a discussion about police politics and how that impacts on people in the police force, primarily on Erica. We have all those things going on in this book to make it multi-layered, very compelling and very interesting. And I'm finding that I just love this series so much. And this book was just brilliant in my view. I mean, the crime's interesting, it is dark, brings about many characters that are suspects. I mean, they lie, there's so many doubts about them. You're wondering, is this person telling the truth or not? It's one of those books where you keep guessing, you make assumptions. You find that you're wrong, you have to make new assumptions. And maybe there are people out there who think, well, I picked it early on, I don't know. But in this book, I couldn't. It's one of those books, I think, that will keep you guessing to the very end. Entertaining, compelling, gripping, very good book in a great series so far. Still Life, written by Louise Penny, the first book in the series to feature Armand Gamache, and this series used to be called the Three Pines Mysteries, I think, or the Three Pines series, and I think it was changed later on as more books were written. But this book is a quiet mystery. It's one of those mysteries, one of those books where it's all about characters, it's all about observation, about discussion, dialogue, not about shocking things going on, high impact twists and turns, high impact scenes, not about that at all. A protagonist likes to sit back, observe, talk and listen, and then slowly make up his mind. And I like the way that's handled. It's quite refreshing because in many modern mysteries, the protagonist rushes about, gets into danger, does all sorts of things like that. And then that way the author's trying to make the book gripping, entertaining in different ways. But in this book, the protagonist is quiet, just sits back, watches and listens. It's quite refreshing to have a protagonist like that in a mystery or crime series. I find it refreshing anyway. And in all books in this series I've read so far, it's like that. It hasn't changed. I do like the mystery. And where it's set, so this village called Three Pines, it's a village of very few people. So you'd think the culprit would be easy to discover, but the culprit isn't easy to discover. It's quite complex, quite convoluted in certain ways, but it feels so real, and all the characters in this village are brilliant. All the characters we meet in great detail anyway. I like them all. I like the setting so much. One of those places where you think, I love to visit. I love to visit if there's not a murder, but it's so richly described and the characters are so warm and so comforting in the way they're described, the way they appear in the story. You like to visit and just stay there for a while. I do enjoy this book very much. The whole series I enjoy a lot. I do recommend this a lot. If you like mysteries that are written very well, like quiet mysteries that have like a village feel to them, read this book. The Cuckoo's Calling, written by Robert Galbraith. It's a mystery, a slow burn mystery that's very detailed, and the characters in this book, all the characters, are written so well. From major characters to support characters to even minor characters and maybe there for 1 or 2 pages. Every character is written so well. If you took those characters out, any character, some of those scenes would fail. Maybe even the whole book would fail. And not many books are like that. I think in some books, if you took some minor characters out here or there, it wouldn't impact the book overall. But in this book, it would. One of the best things about this book, other than the mystery and how complex it is our 2 main characters. How they meet, how they come to understand each other from that first meeting and then slowly understand each other more and more. And what's interesting is we get that awkwardness in their first meeting and then how they come to terms with the other characters' kind of habits and dialogue and way about doing things, all that sort of thing. They're learning about each other, and you see that in this story. You don't get that in many books, I think. You don't get kind of that awkwardness, that almost tiptoeing around trying to work each other out. In some books, I think, characters become friends very quickly, almost instantly in some cases. But in this book, it's not like that. And I enjoyed that very much. It was almost like watching some sort of ballet or dance going on between them as they come to terms with each other and slowly just find out that they appreciate each other. They like each other. They think highly of each other, but it doesn't come straight away. So I enjoy that in the book a lot. The mystery itself felt like one of those classic detective stories. The way it's constructed, the way it plays out, the way a protagonist handled it. Especially the main protagonist, Strike. The way he handles the investigation. I just like everything about this mystery and the story overall. It is quite a long book, and I think further books in this series get longer and longer, but I do plan to read them all. I don't know when, but I like this book a lot. So compelling. For a quiet book, it's very compelling. And I think it all comes down to the 2 main characters in the story more than anything else. Spellslinger, written by Sebastian de Castell. It's the first book in a YA fantasy series called the Spellslinger series, and this book was amazing. Some readers may think, well, how good could a YA fantasy series be? Because sometimes YA books are not everybody's cup of tea. And I did wonder about it when I first read this book, but I think this book is amazing. It's a perfect fantasy book, a perfect first book for a fantasy series. There are great characters, the great setting, and what I like about the setting in this book is it focuses on one town primarily and a few areas outside the town. That gives the reader time to focus on characters, on the magic system, on customs, on the world itself. And then I think later on in the series, I've only read this first book so far, I think later on some characters just venture out into different areas in the world. But I like the way it's written, I like the characters, there's great things going on in this story. And it is quite fast-paced, and I think it has to be for a book like this. I think YA audience likes a more fast-paced book, so it's handled well in this book. But I just like everything about this book. I like the intrigue, I like the characters, I like, the surprises in this story, because there are surprises. I like the world building we get, and I like the setting. Everything about this book just worked. It's so compelling, it's riveting, it's gripping, and I do want to read the rest of the series very soon. I think I have the second book from the library to read soon, but it's one of those series where I read and then got carried away with other books, but it's always on my mind to finish this series. The Drift by C.J. Tudor, and I think this may be the third C.J. Tudor book in my list of 30 favourite books for 2024. This book is 3 lock room mysteries in one book. But are all the mysteries linked? So maybe as a 4th mystery in this book as well. Each mystery is set in an environment that's cold, that's in a snowy area, cold area, and each environment is also isolated. And each environment has characters that are compelling, that are suspicious, and there's doubt around certain characters. And in this world, it's also quite dystopian. So some virus was released and people get infected. And if you do get infected, you can turn into a creature. So if it doesn't kill you, you can turn into a creature. I think they call them whistlers because it affects your lungs. And when you breathe, you make a whistling noise. And these whistlers are quite dangerous. They turn violent and all that sort of thing. So we had many things going on in this story. So we have lock room mysteries in these 3 different environments with different characters. We wonder, are they all linked? And then we have this outside threat of the whistlers. And to keep alive, to keep from getting this virus, you need inoculations quite regularly. So another kind of compelling danger in this story as well. If you don't get inoculated regularly, well, you contract the virus and turn into a whistler or die. So all this goes on in this story, and I like this so much. I mean, each mystery is compelling. The characters are brilliant. We have some characters when they have development and growth, which is really good as well, and there's doubt around some characters, so you wonder about them. Are they trustworthy? What will they do next? So all this plays on in this story, and the way each mystery, the way each kind of story arc, subplot plays out in this book is timed so well. And I enjoyed all of them. So for me, I wasn't sure how 3 lock room mysteries in one book in different locations with different characters would work. But it does. And it just comes down to, I think, the skill of the writer. And maybe the skill of plotting and planning. Because this book, I think, relies on many things to make it a great book, an amazing read. And for me, I recommend this so much. And I think read C.J. Tudor. I mean, I can't recommend this author enough. If you like dark themed stories, if you like tense thrillers and even mysteries and slight horror elements sometimes that come in when it's not a horror book in itself, just like dark themed horror things that make it feel paranormal in nature when it's not, or horror in nature when it's really not. If you like that type of thing in a story, read this author. The Spy Coast, written by Tess Gerritsen. And Tess Gerritsen is one of my favourite authors. She has a series, I think it's called the Rizzolian Isles series, and I like that series a lot. A TV show is based on it, and I do plan to read that series again. But anyway, this book. This book is the first in a series, and I read this because I have the arc of the second book to read, and I want to read this book first. And I'm glad I did because this book is amazing. Based around a group of retired people, and these retired people, they live in a rural area in Maine, and we find out in this story they used to work for the CIA, all of them, and they retired to Maine. And apparently this is a thing in real life, that apparently a lot of people who used to work in the intelligence field retired to rural areas in Maine. So that's a note by the author at the end of the story. And that's why the author chose to write a book based on that. Anyway, what we find out is one of our retired people in Maine is targeted. We don't know why, don't know by who, but she's targeted. And this book is based on this group of people, so our main character and her friends, trying to find out who the threat is and trying to stop that threat. Everything in this book is so well done. The characters are just outstanding. The setting, that setting in Maine, I love it. I'd like to go there. I'd like to move there and live there. It's described so well. It's way out in the rural areas. I mean, you probably have not a strong internet connection, all that sort of thing. So there's that to think about. but I think it's described so well it makes me want to stay there for some time anyway. The way this book plays out is so compelling and gripping. I loved these characters, these retired characters going about and investigating, and we get to see their skills they had in the CIA many years ago in their career. We get to see them bring those skills back, but also to sit around the table and eat all the food they make. I mean, they're like normal people in the story, and I think that's why this book is so good, because all the characters, all those main characters, feel like normal people. And I like books where characters feel normal. And in situations like this, where there's a threat, a dangerous threat, and they're trying to find out who it is, and they're doing different things that may be extraordinary to who they are now. To have the characters feel normal is a great contrast and makes this book feel real to me anyway. Interesting story, great mystery, great settings, great scenes, very compelling and gripping. I recommend this book so much. And of course, there's a second book coming out, I think in 2025, but do read this book first. If you like this type of story, it's almost like a spy adventure type story. Also a bit of a thriller and a mystery, and also kind of feels like a cozy mystery because of the main characters, then read this book. Sea of Rust, written by Robert C. Cargill. Dystopian sci-fi, and everything about this book is amazing. We have a great world building, great setting, great characters. So the setting is we have Earth, and on Earth there's no organic life at all. There was a war between robots and humans, the robots won, and the world is now populated by robots and androids. So there's no life on Earth other than artificial life. And these characters, the main characters in this book, the robots and the androids, they have no emotions unless they were programmed with emotions before the war, so programmed by humans. So some of the characters have no emotions, some maybe have one emotion, like a weak emotion, some have more than one or a strong emotion. It depends on what the android or robot was built for before the war. Interesting, because what it means is, when you read this, the main characters, they're not emotive. What they do is not based on emotion, it's based on need, it's based on logic. And the emotions in the story, they're you projecting emotions on the characters or on the situation. They're your emotions, not the emotions from the characters in the story. So interesting to have a book like this. That was fascinating to me when I read it. We follow Brittle, who's the main character, and I don't think she has emotions at all. She was built as a service robot, so she was built to serve a human. That was her designation, that was her job, I guess, before the human and robot war. And now she just kind of survives. She goes out into the wastelands and she tries to find robot parts to trade for other parts to fix herself, to fix parts on her own body that are failing. And a lot of robots or androids in this world do that. And we learn that many robots and androids, including our main character, they know when certain parts are going to fail, and they do realize that at one stage there won't be parts to replace the parts that do fail. So it's interesting. They thought they'd have a brilliant world, a perfect world without humans. What they find now is they don't. What they know is sometime in the future, they don't know how long in the future, they know at some stage there won't be any life at all on Earth, not even robotic life. And also we have this threat from AIs in the world as well. And at one stage there were many AI kind of characters, and now there's two. And they control armies. And these armies go and raid free settlements. And they either kill other robots or androids or take them captive and change them and make them serve these AI kind of commandos or characters in this world as well. So all that is interesting. And the way everything plays out in this book is interesting as well. Great world building, great setup, great characters. Interesting the way we have no emotions in the story from the characters. That was fascinating and made for a fascinating read. And certainly one of my favorite books from 2024. The Quiet Tenant, written by Clemence Michelin. So what do you do when a book is amazing, but the setup, situations, is unlikely? you still treat the book as amazing when what else can you do? So, the setup in this book is unlikely, but the way it's written, the characters, the situations, the feelings in this story, the tension and suspense, all that is amazing. So what we have a character, and this guy, he has a child. His wife dies very early on in this book, maybe before the book started. And the parents of his wife, so his in-laws, want to sell that house, so he's forced to move. And we learn this guy is very loved by other people in this town. But he has a secret, very dark secret. He's a killer, even a serial killer. He's also a kidnapper. And he has a woman kidnapped and kept in his shed in his backyard. And now he has to move to a new house. He decides what to do about this woman in this shed. And of course, this woman character, we get to meet her as well. She's desperate to stay alive. And I think she's been held captive for 3 or 4 years or so up to this point in this book. She's desperate to stay alive, and she convinces the guy to take her with him to this new home, and she'll still be a captive. He agrees to it with one condition. She stays in one room. She pretends to be a friend of a friend of a friend or something that needs help. And his daughter, I think, is maybe 9 or 10 or something in this story as well, or an early teenager. So very unusual situation, so very unlikely. But the way it's written is brilliant, amazing actually. And I love the way this book plays out. So for me, this book was so interesting and so tense, so suspenseful. And it's all down to the characters more than the situation. Another thing in this book is this guy. There's a lady in the town who likes him and she wants to date him, and they start having a couple of dates, I think, in this story or whatever. And she's interested in learning more about his life. So she's interfering in his life, and that adds to more complications in this whole setup. So many things going on in this book to add suspense and tension and intrigue and all those sorts of things. A great book in my view, very well written. The characters are brilliant. The situations in this book are so tense and so gripping. It had me on the edge of my seat for most of this book, if not all of the book. A brilliant book in my view, and very much deserves being my third favourite book of 2024. Legends and Lattes, written by Travis Baldree. This is book 1 in the Legends and Lattes series, and the prequel was written after this book. I love this book. It's a cozy fantasy. There's a storyline in this book about setting up a coffee shop as the main storyline. Renovating an old barn or something into more a coffee shop style building. Starting the coffee shop, getting clientele, getting regular customers, learning about how to sell and market for this new coffee shop, all that sort of thing. That whole storyline about the coffee shop would be enough for me because it brings in great characters, great situations. We have a character called Thimble, and Thimble is a creature called a ratkin, and Thimble is brilliant as a character. I could read a book just about Thimble, nothing else, just about him. He's a baker, and he starts baking for the coffee shop, and I just love his growth in the story. He alone, his character, makes this book amazing, but other things in this book are just as amazing, so he's like the icing on the cake. This book is just so well done. It feels like to me like a computer game in a way, where you start from a small position and you start learning your skills, developing them, leveling up if you will, and getting better and better in the game. That's what it feels like in some ways, and I do like that feeling. But I like the characters, I like the situations, I like the world building, the setting, everything. So in my view, this cozy fantasy is just amazing. I would read this book again and again and again. I think it's just wonderful. It's very cozy. If you don't like cozy type books, you may not like this. If you don't like fantasy, you won't like this book. But I think this book is just outstanding. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. So yes, my top 2 books for 2024 are by the same author and in the same series. This is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. Very close call to which book came first and second. But this book is just amazing and just marginally better than the book in second position. What I like in this book, just like the other book, is the characters and the setup. And in this world, the world building is good as well. And the primary storyline is about a bookshop. So our main character, Viv, she's a mercenary and she has an injury and recuperating in this seaside town. And she's bored one day and she happens across a bookstore. And the character who owns this bookstore is amazing. Her name is Fern. She's a creature called a ratkin. And in this cozy fantasy world, this character Fern is just foul-mouthed all the time. There's quite a few swear words in this book. But anyway, the storyline about Viv helping Fern get her bookstore up to scratch again. Repairing things, helping her market things, helping her with the bookstore in general. That storyline for me is enough in this story. I could just read that and nothing else. There are other things in this book going on, of course, and they also are wonderful, but this bookshop storyline is just wonderful on its own. And Fern as a character, there's something about ratkins as characters. So Fern in this book, Thimble in the other book. Fern, I could read a book about her alone. A book about her would be brilliant. So great characters, great situations, great world building, a cozy feel to it that I love. If you don't like fantasy, you probably won't like this book. If you don't like cozy type books, you may not like this book as well. If you've not read any of these books by Travis Baldree, I suggest read them, give one a go, see if you like it. I think they're both brilliant, and this really deserves #1 spot on my 30 best books for 2024. So there you have my top 30 books for 2024. Different genres, maybe some surprises for you in that list, who knows? Have you read any of these books? What did you think? What were your favourite books of 2024? Let me know. I'd love to know what they were, and I'll add them to my TBR and get around to reading them at some stage. But I'm interested to know what other people are reading, because there are so many books out there. I mean, how many books get published each year? Of course, people read different books. We like different books. We love different books. So let me know your favourite reads, and let me know if any of the books in my list were some of your favourites. On my channel, I read books of all different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to another video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.